All right. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick tutorial on for InDesign, basically talking about auto page numbers, master pages, just some of those things that we need for our magazine article. I'm going to create a new document. I'm just going to go ahead and make it 8.5 by 11. And I'm going to start with just the 3 pages. And I'm going to say create. So my 3 pages are individual pages, but with what I'm doing with the magazine, we really want these to be facing pages. So I'm going to go up to File, Document Setup, and select Facing Pages. And also, you need to be thinking about whether this is print or it's web. And ideally, you're going to be making this for print because you want to be able to have it for your portfolio. And I think I just hit the wrong button. So let me go back again to document setup, facing pages, and print. And let's say okay. So this is the format that you should have. This is your cover. This is your spread, your article. Right now we have one master. It's an A master, and you can see there's an A, so there's all A's. But this isn't really going to work because we have a double page here, and I want to put a page number on the left-hand page and a page number on the right-hand page. And if I use my master A, I can only do left or right. So if I put it here, that's going to work for this side. But that's not going to work for this side because my page number would be in the center, kind of in that spine area. So we need a master page that's facing pages. So I'm going to go up to the 4 little lines and I'm going to say new master, and it's going to default call it B. You can rename it if you want to. I'm just going to leave it, but we want 2 pages and say okay. So now you could see that there's facing pages here. There's a master B now, but it still says A and A. So we have to apply this master to these 2 pages. You could do that one of 2 ways. I can click, hold, and drag, and then it will go ahead and drop that on there, and now it changed to B. Or I'm going to Command Z and undo that. I can click on this 2 and 3 so it highlights both pages, go to the 4 little lines, apply master to pages, and change that A to a B. And when I say okay, it now changes that to B. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to double click on that master page up above. And I'm going to zoom into this bottom corner. So realizing that this margin that goes all the way around here, this is where my text for my article is going to be. So I would not put my page number inside that area. I need to make sure I'm working outside the area. Look at your magazine to see where they put their page numbers. Is it in the left corner and the right corner, or is it centered? Usually magazines don't put it in the center up here, but I have seen some that do that. Typically it'll be down in this corner. And also be aware that on your margins, you can actually click this unlink and you can make your bottom margin a little bigger. You could see that it's moving. So oftentimes your bottom margin might be a little bit bigger. So pay attention to that on your magazine. And notice that I only was selected on the left page, so it didn't move the right one. So I'm going to undo and select both of those and go back to my margins. And I'm going to make my bottom margin just slightly larger. So it gives me a little bit more room down here. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and draw. I'm going to give a little space, draw myself a text box. I'm going to go to Type, Insert Special Character, Markers, Current Page Number. It's going to put a B in there because we're on Master B. I'm going to highlight that text. I'm just going to pick some other typeface because you probably don't want to stick with the typeface that's generic and it comes with. I'm going to change the size. Again, I would try and mimic what your magazine does. And I can put this on that edge right there and then hold shift and move it straight down. Let me zoom out a little bit just to make sure I have enough space. That's perfectly fine. Make sure that you have your text box large enough so that it can fit multiple numbers in there. So if this magazine, let's say it's on page 149, you want to make sure that your box is big enough to fit 3 numbers. You don't want it to be this big because it won't even fit if you have it on page 10. So make sure that that text box is large enough to have at least the 2 numbers. Like most magazines are probably just double digits. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can see both edges here. And I'm going to select this box, click, hold, and drag, and hold down Command Option Shift. I don't know why this is giving me a hard time, but Command Option Shift, don't let go until you get it all the way over. I let go with my right hand, and then I let go of Command Option Shift. This one's left justified. This one on the right page is going to be right justified. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to go to right justify. And in this case, I'm going to draw myself a guide because I can see that the bowls of the B are too far over. So I want to get it right on that kind of guide there. So I'm going to zoom in a little closer, and I'm going to move this over a little bit more. And it's perfectly fine if you want to do it this way. If you want to line it up, if you want to line it up with the text box, that's fine. Just do it on both sides. I'm just kind of scooting this over. But again, I could do it this way and come back over here and do the same thing. You can just test it out with, whatever it is that you have. Like the typeface makes a difference, what typeface you might use. And sometimes I like it just to make sure that it lines up. But you can start like this, and if you need to adjust, you can go back and adjust it. So now if I come down to page 2 and 3, notice it says page 2 and 3. And you can't click on those because they're on the master, and you don't want to. There is a way to override these, but you really don't want to do that. If you're going to make a change, you want to do it here, because then it affects all of your pages. So if I were to insert 4 pages and say, okay, I can come down here and it says page 4 and 5, page 6 and 7. So as you're adding pages, it keeps that style. And if you want to change it, you come back up here, you can change the font size or whatever, and I'll change it on all those pages that are down below. So that's your auto page numbers. And then if you wanted to do, let's say that the top of every page, it says Life, because you're doing Life magazine. If it's centered, you want to center it and open your text box all the way from one edge to the other edge. And then just move it wherever you want it to be. This is making sure it's centered. What I've seen happen a lot lately is you guys are putting this, you're making it left justified, and then you're scooting it over and you're just trying to find the center. Well, you're not going to center it that way. It's a lot more difficult unless I actually drop a guide that's in the center of this page and then try and line it up that way. But it's so much easier if you just open this box up and hit center, and now you know that it's centered between this edge of the page and this edge of the page, which makes it centered on the document. So that's going to work a lot better. Make sure that that's on your master page, and if this magazine has like spring issue on this side, then put it in there. So whatever the magazine that you're referring to, whatever it has, you want to try and mimic the best that you can. So also you want to remember, if we go to document setup and we go to bleed, it's going to be 0.25. I don't mind if you do 0.125, but we'll just go with a 1/4 inch. This especially goes for your cover. So your cover art is probably going to bleed off the edge. So if this is my cover, let's just say, let me just make this a color. We'll just make it pink. Ooh, that's great. Your artwork is not just going to go to the edge of the document. It's going to go to the bleed area, all the way to the outside. And that way, when you trim it, you're not going to get any of those little white kind of pieces that are in there. So Make sure, excuse me, make sure you set a bleed area up in File, Document Setup, and set that bleed there. That really only comes into effect down in your text if you have an image that bleeds off the edge. And I'll show you that here in a minute. But let me go ahead and make a text box area. And I'm going to draw another text box area. So this one's going to be all the way top to bottom. And I did that because I would have a title somewhere up here. And this page, what you would want it to start up at that margin. And I want these text boxes to be linked. So I'm going to click on this bottom square and just click in that second one. So now these two are linked. So if I go to View, Extras, and Text Threads, you're going to see that it's threaded there. And the other way you can test that is we're going to fill it with placeholder text, and you can see that now it's all filled. I don't want this to be one column for an article, never ever. I'm going to go to Object, Text Frame Options, and change it to 2 columns. Make sure you increase your gutter at least 0.25. Again, refer to your magazine to see how much gutter space they use. You can use the left justify ragged right, which is what this is. Never use center for an article. Never use right justified ragged left. That's just really hard to read because our eye is constantly going back and forth. Go to left justify. You can fully justify, but pay attention to what happens to this bottom line. This is the right one you want to use. This one, that bottom line centers, and this one, it expands all the way across, causing these funky rivers. You don't want to use that one either. So you want to make sure that you're either using left justify ragged right, left justify, and aligned left for that bottom. Also pay attention to your article. Do they put a space between paragraphs, or do they hit a tab and indent those kind of the new paragraphs? So make sure you pay attention to that as well. So let's go ahead and add in, I'm just going to add a box in here as if we were adding an image. And if I'm adding an image, I want to make sure that I'm following the grid that I have already set out for me. So let's do a box here that's blue. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to make sure that I'm following this grid that I've set up. And what I was talking about with bleeding off the edge, I can absolutely take this. I wouldn't just pull it to the edge. I would pull it to the bleed area. You just don't want to float this to the middle. That's really annoying. And if you put it here, that's a little weird because it's too close to that edge. So you want to make sure that you're putting this right on that grid line that you have. And then you're going to open your text wrap, which is under Window, Text Wrap, if yours isn't open. I'm going to click on this third button, which is basically just wrapping around that shape. And there you kind of have me, I can increase how much space it has around it. Look at the space here and the space here, make sure it's equal, and make sure it's bleeding off the edge. Now, for the bottom of the page, you're only doing one spread, but let's say that your article went on to some other, like following pages. I have some extra on here, so let me just delete some of this till I get to, because I added the image, so, or the big box, push some off the page. Sheesh. Okay. So you might want to come back here a little bit until kind of pulls it up. Let me just pull it up a little more. Okay, something like that. So you might want to say continued on page, whatever it might be, 45. Something like that. One thing that I forgot to tell you is that this is still on page 2 and 3. And we want to change that because we don't want it to be page 2 and 3, because 2 is the back cover or the inside of the cover. The back of the front cover is what I meant. And then page 3 is usually like an ad or something else. And then you have your table of contents and all of that. So to change your page number, click on the pages in your pages panel, go up to the 4 little lines, numbering and section options, and then start page at, and then what page is it going to start at? So that's the left-hand page here. It's actually your first page, but we're going to delete page 1 anyway. So remember, we're saying page 2 and 3, that's the one we're clicked on. So if, look at your magazine, if the left-hand pages are even numbers, then maybe this is page 24. So notice this stayed 1 because we were only selected on these, and now it's page 24 and 25. So now it feels a little more realistic here. Okay, so back to kind of like this ending here. So you could do this continued on page 45, or if this is the end, like let's say your article ends up here. Look at how your magazine ends articles. So you can, sometimes they draw like a line here to kind of signify this is the end. Sometimes they might put in like a little glyph. So something that, like a little rectangle or something. And every font has its own glyphs. So these are not all of them. You could go to any typeface you want. And there's even wingdings in here. And here's some. So if it was a square, there's a square. And this is like text. So I can make it smaller, bigger. I can even adjust how high it sits on the baseline. So if I want it centered, there it's centered. So that signifies, maybe your magazine uses that to signify the end of an article. And then down below this line, I'm just going to drop a couple of lines here. And I'm going to say like written by blah, blah, blah. You need it like somebody who wrote the article. Maybe you put that at the beginning of the article by the title. Maybe you put it here. Maybe you're going to say, your photo description is going to be here. So it might say photo above, and then here is whatever your caption, I guess I could type in that, caption for the caption for your photo above would go here. So that kind of fills that little space in too, if you are looking for something to fill in kind of that space. Also, if your article does, or if your magazine does drop caps, I went over this before, but I'll just go over it here. It's under it's under paragraph, I think. Here it shows like a little drop cap. So this is showing how many lines does it affect. So now you can see it's affecting 2. Obviously, if you have 1, it doesn't do anything. So 2, 3, you could see there, it's affecting them. And then this is how many letters. I rarely use this because that's just weird. Unless your word is like it, or I don't know, something really short. I would just keep it with the 1. Also, if I delete this letter, it's just going to pull the next letter because I still have it set here. It's whatever the first letter is. So if I take this out, you can also cut, paste your I. I can make this significantly larger. I can go to type, create outlines, put it in here wherever I want. And then I can do a text wrap. So I could just do a text wrap around it. So just kind of a fun, like a different way to do it. That works really well when your letter is, let me go back to before I created outlines. Okay, let's say my, my letter is, well, let's find a fancy, like a, it's kind of weird. It's not even showing me like scripty. No, definitely not that one. Okay, there we go. So let's say that I wanted to use some funky thing. Well, if I have it inside my text box, remember it can only go this far because that's where my text box lives. So if I wanted to do something different, I could do something like this. I typically save a version before it's converted. off to the side. So if I want to go back and change it, I can. If I decide I don't like this typeface, I can change it. So if I come in here and click this, then my letters will kind of go around it. And sometimes this is what happens. So I'll show you a quick shortcut. Like let's say I want it to be more like this. I can turn off the text wrap from my letter, and then I can just take this pen tool and kind of create this shape that goes all the way around. No fill, no stroke, but then I can add the text wrap to that shape. And so then nothing comes in this funky area over there, but now you have this kind of cool little feel like that. Make sure also that you select your text, go to paragraph, and deselect hyphenate, because all these hyphenations are super irritating, and I will dock you for that. So make sure you take hyphenations off. And that's really all for talking about master pages, auto page numbers, and kind of your basic setup for your magazine. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you guys have any other questions.